Hi, my name is Imran and I'm a Muslim, as you can see. And I'm hoping for this video to be able to engage in a dialogue with some of the non-Muslims who might be watching this video. Those who are across the globe, but primarily those who are in the UK. But before I begin, I want to start off by praising your Lord and my Lord, Allah, for His completeness and His perfection. And I ask Him to send His peace and blessings upon the noble Prophet Muhammad, and to praise him in the assembly, in the gathering of the angels. And I testify and I bear witness that there is no deity worthy to be worshipped in truth except for Allah, and that the Prophet Muhammad is his slave and his messenger. With that said, you might be wondering, why on earth does this Muslim want to engage in a dialogue with you? The reason I want to engage in a dialogue with you is because of the incidents, the attacks that took place last night around London Bridge and other parts of London. Those attacks and the ones before it in Manchester and the ones before it in Westminster. Why do I want to address it? Because the media has reported that these attacks were carried out by people who were inclined towards the Islamic religion, or they had attributed themselves, or they were Muslims. And of course with that there's this whole kind of, narrative that's pushed out online and on social media and on the media that is mainstream, that, Islam has some kind of a hidden agenda and, dubious Muslims are around, you can't trust your Muslim neighbour, a guy with a beard, he might be there, he might be planning and plotting something. These kind of narratives that are out there and that which you're seeing can lead a person to have some questions and some concerns, which I hope to address in this video. Concerns and questions like, are Muslims really barbaric? Do they really want to spill innocent blood? This whole notion of jihad and whatnot and so on and so forth. Like, what is it? We keep seeing these things happen. Do they really want to kill us all? Are we really at risk and at harm from Muslims? Like, what do they want from us here in the UK? What is their problem with us? What's the fundamental problem that Muslims have with non-Muslims? Like, what's going on? Now, the answer to those questions in short is that of course Islam is not a barbaric, unjust religion that wants to spill the blood of innocent people. Not in any way, shape or form. I know that though, but you don't. And because you don't know it and that which you see in the narrative that's pushed out, I kind of empathize with you to a degree where you might have those questions, even though if you look at the bigger picture, it's wrong. But I empathize why those questions and concerns might come, and for that reason I hope to be able to address them in this video. But before I begin, I want to mention three introductory points before I actually answer those questions. The first introductory point is that even though I've been wanting to make this video when the previous incidents and attacks happened, I didn't go out there and make it. And the reason I didn't make it was because I was worried about feeding into the narrative that the media is pushing out there, that Muslims have to come out and condemn an atrocious act when another Muslim happens to carry it out. So if another guy who happens to be a Muslim happens to do a crime, suddenly all Muslims have to come out and free themselves from affiliation and free themselves from association to this individual and the crime and the atrocity that he's done? As if to say that there's a question mark on the morality of Muslims, that we may be possibly pleased with the killing of innocent people. And that's an atrocious, an absolutely outright, really just, terrible thing to assume. And a terrible thing to put, it's a terrible position to put Muslims in. Because we don't hold all of Christians accountable when the KKK went around doing what they did. We don't hold, Caucasian people responsible today for that which their ancestors had done with the slave trade. And we don't hold, the British government, we don't hold the general British public responsible and accountable for the atrocities of the British Empire and the British government. Just literally last 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. That which they did in India, that which they did in other parts of the world. The genocides that were carried out, the killing of innocent people that happened. We don't do that, so it shouldn't be done to us. And I was always scared of falling into that category of Muslims who have to come out and be like, I condemn it. Of course I condemn it. Me being a Muslim automatically means I condemn it. But I thought, with that said, there's more harm in remaining silent than there is in coming out and actually addressing it in this way. Because if I don't address it, then speculations might occur. And you guys might start to, you know, come to your conclusions based on what the media is putting out there. So either I let the media speak, or I speak myself on behalf of my religion and my people. That's the first introductory point. The second introductory point is that I have to mention, although that these incidents happen, and I believe that they do happen, and there are crazy psychopathic people who happen to maybe be Muslim, who happen to be Muslim, that have carried them out, that doesn't mean I believe that every single one of these attacks is actually an attack that really happened and took place. And I'm a person who's far from conspiracies, and I hate conspiracies, and I'm fed up with people who always talk to me about conspiracies. But being honest and just, and having looked into some of these things and the stories around it and the way certain things panned out, there's a lot of these incidents that do actually have question marks on them. For example, sometimes you find that the media, the BBC, or maybe not the BBC, I can't remember exactly who, but there are some media outlets that are actually, you know, reporting some of these incidents before they actually took place. Like, how do you report a terrorist incident before the terrorist incident happened? 5 hours before. How are you reporting it? It never took place yet. So it makes you think, hold up, what's going on? So I'm not saying it did happen. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm agreeing that they do happen, but I'm not entirely comfortable saying it's all happening, because we've got this kind of question mark on these incidents. And the Quran teaches me that if a person who's rebellious and known to sin and known to not be upright and just comes to you with news, I should verify that news. So until I verify all of this news, I can't come out and stand for it and say this really happened. And the media, as we know, is not upright. They are a sensationalist institute that are concerned with their own agendas, even if their agenda is just ratings and money and selling newspapers with these, you know, titles and, you know, tabloid kind of titles and pictures and images. That they sell the newspaper, but they also incur hatred and injustice in the hearts of the people who might read these papers. So, you know, for them, they got their own pockets to worry about. They got their own ratings to worry about, if not any other political agenda that they have to worry about. So because of all of that and the injustice that we've seen in the past and the stories that came out that had to be retracted because of them unjustly portraying certain things in the media is not a trustworthy source anyway within itself. That news has to be verified. Until I can verify every single incident, I can't stand and say it actually did happen. So I withhold taking a position with regards to it. But then at the same time, I'm not saying that these incidents do not take place. They do, but I can't stand for every single particular incident. The third and final introductory point that I want to mention before I go in is that I'm a orthodox, traditional, conservative Muslim. I'm as orthodox and as traditional as it can get. Okay? In other words, I'm a Salafi. Probably heard that term on the news. Okay, they try to portray it in a bad way, but I'm going to address it with the permission of Allah. Why is it important for you to know that I'm a conservative, traditional, orthodox Muslim? It's because conservative, traditional, orthodox Muslims are the ones who are being stereotyped through the media, through social media, through these other groups, fascist right-wing groups. We're being stereotyped as the terrorist. So you want me to believe that if you see a guy with a beard like me, wearing a thobe, which is the garment that I wear, you see me on the street, you need to be worried. I am a risk. I am a threat to you. That's the narrative that's being pushed. That we, the ones who live by the book, the Quran, and the textual evidences from the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, we're the ones to be worried about. We're the ones with the corrupted ideology. And the rest of the Muslims out there, you know, the ones who shave their beards or whatever have you, they're the ones that you don't have to worry about. In actuality, you know, if you just kind of look at the terrorists previously, how many of them actually had beards? The majority of the ones who were in Paris, the ones who were in the UK, they never even had beards, majority of them. So it's funny that they put this kind of stuff out, but at the same time, the guy's picture that they show is clean shaven. And they tell you he was a drug addict and, you know, he was going to the club, which is not what a righteous Muslim, anyone who knows anything about Islam knows our position on clubbing and drinking and, you know, sleeping with women or women sleeping with men outside of marriage and alcohol and drugs and whatnot. But it just so happens that the people who carried out these terrorist attacks, they were not of a, you know, Islamic morality, a conservative Islamic morality. But yet they still try to paint them like us. And this is something that is called the fallacy of the undistributed middle if you study logic. Now, just because I might share a commonality with an extremist, Let's just say that there is an extremist and he has a beard, like the ISIS guys, they got beards, right? So let's just say that there is an extremist that shares a commonality with me. Because we share a commonality somewhere does not mean that because of that commonality we're now exactly the same. The same way, if I have a friend who takes oxygen and I have a dog who takes oxygen, it does not now follow that my friend and my dog are the exact same being. You see? So just because I have some commonalities that an extremist does not mean that does not mean me and the extremists are exactly the same. Even then, we're finding that a lot of the extremists out there are not actually in the picture that is painted, meaning someone who looks like me. That's not me saying that a Muslim who doesn't have a beard is an extremist either. I'm not saying that. But you can't, what I'm trying to make you understand is that you can't label, you can't find a particular one image and say this is what an extremist looks like. It's a bit deeper than that. So, coming back to the point I was making, the reason I'm telling you I'm a traditional Orthodox Muslim is because I'm going to tell you what the traditional Orthodox Islamic view is. The earliest view. The most classic view. The one that people are like, really? You're going to apply that today in the 21st century? Yes, I am going to apply that today. I'm going to apply that today in the 21st century. That's what I believe. Okay, that pure, what the Quran said and the way it was understood in the early generations. I believe that today. And I'm going to answer to you the questions and concerns you have to show you that from the purest, most conservative, most orthodox view of Islam, there is in no way, shape or form that any of these killings could be justified in any way, shape or form. And Islam from its very essence is not barbaric in any way, shape or form. You see, me, myself, I'm a person who studies the religion of Islam. This is a part of my library behind me. This library is explaining just this one book right here, which is the Quran, okay? To show you the amount of time that goes in, dedication that goes into studying these classical texts to understand the Quran. And I'm a student of these classical texts. I'm a student of this classical tradition. So when you hear these answers from me, rest assured you're going to hear from me the orthodox, most conservative, most rigid, most what you could call strict Islamic view. And in our conservatism, and in our orthodoxy, and in our strictness, for lack of a better term, you're going to find there is no room in any way, shape or form for acts and atrocities of this nature. The extremists that you see, those who go above the bar, those who fall far below it, whichever way, extremely excessive or extremely negligible, they do not represent Orthodox Islam in any way, shape or form. So without any further ado, let us begin. I have with me here a exegesis, in other words, an explanation of the Quran called Tafsir Ibn Kathir. This is just one volume, by the way. There's many volumes. This is one of the most classical explanations of the Quran that you're going to find. One that is respected and appreciated by all Muslims across the globe. Whether you are of an ISIS inclination or whether you're of a liberal inclination, you're going to look at this exegesis of the Quran with respect and you're going to take what it says seriously. Why do you have people like ISIS then? It's because they never took the time out to read something like this. They were never taught this. They never read it in its entirety or understood it. They were just kind of maybe, they heard things cut and pasted from here and there. So what is it I want to mention to you? I want to mention to you a verse from the Quran in which Allah, He mentions that anyone who takes the life of an innocent person, in chapter 5, Allah mentions anyone who takes the life of an innocent person unjustly, it is as if he or she has killed the whole of humanity. And anyone who saves the life of an innocent person, it is as if they have saved the whole of humanity. So that is how sacred life is to the Muslims. That one person killing him unjustly, Allah equated it to killing all of humanity and saving one person. That is the sanctity of life. That is how sacred life is to us. And notice, Allah, He never mentioned saving the life of a Muslim. Saving the life of any human being. Anyone is as if you saved all of humanity. Allah left it general. Now, Ibn Kathir in this exegesis brings statements and commentaries from the most classical, orthodox exegetes of the Quran. And I'm going to mention to you their statements to show you this is what we believe. Not a conjured up new politicized version of Islam or a radicalized version of Islam as a result of politics and whatnot. That, in other words, is ISIS. Not that. This is the earliest generation. And what is the proof that it's the earliest generation? I'm going to mention to you statements of none other than the companions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and their students, who are the equivalent to what you would call the disciples of Jesus, and how they understood these verses. And we understand these verses in light of that, because that's what being a Salafi means. You follow the companions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Abdullah ibn Abbas, who's one of the most noble companions, in other words, what you would call a disciple of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he mentioned, based on his statement, that anyone who takes the life of one person unjustly, it is like he has taken the life of all of humanity. And anyone who saves the life of a person who is innocent, free from anything, is as if he or she saved the whole of humanity. This is a commentary of none other than Ibn Abbas, Abdullah ibn Abbas. His student Mujahid corroborates with him. And I have many other statements here. I don't want to go too long. I've highlighted some of them, but it's in the Arabic language. But I've got them highlighted for you. I'm trying to translate them. But if you wanted to refer back to it, you could do so if you happen to know Arabic. But it's there. This is something that we as Muslims believe. Our forefathers who laid down the science of this religion believe this. None other than the disciples who were taught by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon himself. They taught us this, that to take the life of one person is if I took the life of all of humanity. And they understood this from none other than the Quran itself. I want to mention to you now another verse. A verse in the chapter called Al-Mumtahina, in which Allah mentions that a Muslim is not prohibited from being kind, and from being upright, and from being just, and from being generous, and from being, good to a person, whoever that person might be, as long as that person does not try to kill me, does not try to fight me as a result of my religion, or try to exile me from my land. I, as a Muslim, and every other Muslim who's living here in the UK or in other parts of the West, do not face, death or harm by the non-Muslims who are living in those countries. We, as a Muslim community here, do not have non-Muslims who are trying to kill us, who are trying to exile us from our lands. Based on that, what do I understand as a Muslim from this verse? Is that I'm supposed to be good to you. I'm supposed to be kind to you. If you need money, I'm here to help you. My neighbor, if you're hungry, I'm hungry with you. I'm going to feed you my food. I'm taught to let my family starve, but put food on your plate. That's what my religion teaches me. That's what we understand from this verse. And in case you're wondering again, am I taking this verse out of context? Am I misunderstanding? I have here with me Tafsir Ibn Jarir al-Tabari, which is the most respected and the most classic, even more classic than the previous tafsir I mentioned, even more classic than the previous explanation I mentioned of the Quran. It is the one that's respected universally amongst all different sects and denominations of Islam, no matter how extreme or misguided that they might be. Of course, the one that is the most guided, the guided one, is the one that is the Salafi one, that is the most traditional. But again, like I said, all Muslims respect this. And again, if you go to his explanation of that same verse in there, you'll find him mentioning the exact same thing, that this refers to all people who do not try to harm you, who do not try to fight you, no matter what he mentions, no matter what religion that they might be from. But you be good to them. You be good to them. You treat them with justice and fairness and uprightness. That is from the Quran. There's many other verses, but that will suffice. I want to mention to you a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, which is narrated in the noble book Sunan Abi Dawood, authentically narrated, in which the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, says, anyone who kills a mu'ahid, anyone who kills a mu'ahid, and I'll tell you what a mu'ahid is in a second. The Prophet said, anyone who kills a mu'ahid will not even smell the fragrance of paradise, and the fragrance of paradise can be sniffed from 40 years away. What is a mu'ahid? Mu'ahid is a non-Muslim who you have a covenant with, a covenant of peace, a covenant of security with. So if I, as a Muslim, want to get anywhere near close to being in paradise, I am not allowed to, no Muslim is allowed to take the life of a non-Muslim who you have a covenant with. Meaning, I have an agreement of peace and security and safety with you. I'm not allowed to backstab you and take your life. If I do that, I'm going to burn in hell. And every Muslim who does that is going to end up in the hellfire. That is what we're taught by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon himself. Now, you might think, well, why do I need to have a covenant to be safe from you? Shouldn't I be safe from you anyway? Yes, of course. That's why I just mentioned those previous verses. Whether I have a covenant with you or not, whether you're non-Muslim or not, if you're an innocent person, you're not allowed to be harmed. And if you're harmed and you're killed, it's as if the whole of humanity has been killed. But this is one step further now. Not only are you innocent, but now you have a covenant. It was already wrong. And it was already as if you were killing all of humanity if you were to be killed. And if you were to be harmed. But now the fact that there's a covenant with you, upon the fact that you're already innocent and you shouldn't have been harmed, now, if you are to be harmed, it's even worse as a punishment for the one who harms you. And that's based on this narration. Now the question is, on what basis do we have a covenant? You might be sitting there, well, hold up, I don't have a covenant with non-Muslims. I never sat down and made a treaty with the Muslims. You might not have realized, but there is a covenant in the Sharia. Yes, the Sharia, which is so scary and always talked about. In the Sharia, if a non-Muslim stands in front of me and I just as much as wave at him, that is a covenant between me and that non-Muslim. Why? Because waving is a gesture of safety and security. You don't wave and you don't smile at someone that you want to harm. And whose understanding is this? Am I just chopping and changing things around? No. This is none other than Imam Ahmed. Who is Imam Ahmed? Imam Ahmed is one of the most greatest and well-respected jurists of the Islamic tradition. Well, is it just him that believes this? No. Rather, he transmitted a unanimous consensus. And by the way, he's right there at the beginning of the earliest generations. You can't get more classic and more orthodox than Imam Ahmed. He mentioned that this is a unanimous consensus amongst all of the classical traditional Orthodox Muslims, from the companions of the Prophet, peace be upon him, to his time. And this is an unbroken consensus. There is no one who has broken this consensus. There's no one who can break this consensus. It is a unanimous consensus that if I so much as wave at a non-Muslim, or I smile at a non-Muslim, he is to me now a mu'ahid. He's someone I'm in a covenant with. And if I backstab him now by killing him, or taking his life, or harming him or his family, according to that narration of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, I'm not going to make it to paradise anywhere near it. I won't even smell its fragrance, even though its fragrance can be smelt from 40 years away. And look, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you that there are not verses about jihad and fighting in the Quran, and there are not narrations about fighting. Yes, there are. Yes, there are. But that's our law, that's our legislation. The same way you have laws pertaining to war and military conflict, and legislation pertaining to the code and conduct of war. You have that as well. Islam is not just a religion that is, practiced in your house. It's a religion that governs nations. Nations engage in military conflict, so they need to be governed with regards to the conduct and the do's and the don'ts. So you will find verses about warfare. Do you not have the Constitution in the United States of America that gives you the right to bear arms and defend yourself? Someone comes into your house in the USA, you can shoot him. Right? You can shoot, you can kill. Right? So I'm saying they have their regulations and laws, and in the UK there are regulations and laws pertaining to conflict and military and self-defense, and the Quran has the exact same. But that doesn't mean you take those legislations that are particular and specific to war and apply them to times of peace and security. Like I told you, me living here in the UK, any Muslim who lives in the UK, by virtue of that prophetic statement and that consensus transmitted by Imam Ahmed, is in a state of peace and security and a covenant with a non-Muslim. So how in any way, shape or form can you apply verses and narrations of war at a time of peace and harmony? Because if that was the case, then if all Muslims really believed that, then would there be any non-Muslims alive? No, we would have probably gone around crazy killing them all, but we don't, because that's not what we believe. And just on that note about, rules about war, what are our legislations when it comes to war? Yeah, sure, if a person is trying to kill you and harms you for your religion, trying to exile you from your land, threatening your family, you have the right to defend yourself. You have the right to bear arms in that situation. No one's going to deny that. But do you know the extent to which the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, regulated such military conflict? We're not allowed to harm an innocent person, as you already know. But forget harming an innocent person, we cannot even harm trees. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said you can't even cut down trees. Why? Because those trees, they're part of an ecosystem. They're part of it. What did that ecosystem do to you? Not just that. The people might use those trees. Those trees might bear fruit for the local community. Those trees might bear shade. Those trees might be a means of resource for you. What has that tree done? If someone else is attacking me, I'm not allowed to harm no trees. This is one of the reasons that the Islamic scholars of the Orthodox tradition passed an Islamic verdict that the nuclear bomb is not permissible in our tradition. In Islam, the nuclear bomb is not permissible. Why? Because the nuclear bomb kills innocent, unjust people. In other words, collateral damage. Remember, collateral damage is not a term we created. Sadly, that term came from the non-Muslims. Not that I'm saying all non-Muslims, believe collateral damage is okay, but they came up with this term. We never came up with this term. For us, collateral damage is impermissible. It is haram. It is killing the lives of innocent people. We fall under these threats from Allah and His Messenger. Peace and blessings be upon him. So the nuclear bomb is not something we can have because it will destroy buildings, it will destroy hospitals, it will destroy trees, which is something that we're not in any way, shape or form allowed to destroy. So the question comes to mind, well, where on earth and how on earth are these people coming out, and they happen to be Muslims and they're doing these traditions? If it's so clear, if the Quran is so like this and the Hadith are so like this and clearly telling you can't kill innocent people, why do we have Muslims doing that? That's the exact same way. Why did we have, people who were out there who were using the Bible to justify the spilling of blood of Muslims in Jerusalem in the Crusades? Parisian, soldiers and crusaders boasting that, we killed so many of these heathens that their blood flowed in the streets ankle high. You had a bunch of crazy people for political reasons who were misinterpreting the biblical scripture, and as a result of that trying to justify the killing of innocent Muslims. The same way the people using the Bible and in manipulating it to justify the enslavery of the African people during the slave trade, right? The same way the KKK did, and so on and so forth. The same way you have people like Stalin and whatnot that were using communism to justify the ethnic cleansing of religious people and people who are lower than them. The same way now you have people in the name of democracy who will go into countries like Iraq and bomb them and kill 132,000 innocent people. Am I going to go out there and say that everyone who believes in liberal democracy believes in the unjust killing of people? No. But then you have people who did. You had governments and nations and militaries who went into Iraq and went into Afghanistan, and they used liberal democracy. And they used it to manipulate people and manipulated the democracy. Why? To spill the blood of innocent people for whatever their gains might be. Saying that Saddam Hussein has chemical weapons, then only to find, hold up, there was no threat whatsoever of chemical weapons. He had none of them. There was no threat from Iraq, but they still killed 132,000 people. And they left that country in such a war-torn state. Extremism breeds extremism, that they left a vacuum. And that vacuum was filled by none other than who? ISIS. I would really like to direct all of you guys to a professor in the United States of America, Professor Robert Pape. I'll put his link below. He has done an amazing research on this very, very topic. Sorry guys, 1 second. I have to pray the morning prayer. In the morning prayer, we pray at dawn. So I was just checking out the window to see if the sun is coming up. So I want to direct you guys to this professor called Professor Robert Pape. And he did research. He wanted to see that terrorist attacks, specifically suicide terrorist attacks, because they're the most dangerous ones, are they carried out by these Muslims as a result of their religion, or are they carried out due to some other reason? And he concluded that 95+% of these attacks are carried out, why? Due to economic, political and social reasons. In other words, the reason why ISIS was formed, not because of Islam, but because these people grew up in a war-torn country. They had their parents whose heads were blown off. Their cities were destroyed and bombed. They grew up in violence, so they themselves became violent. They saw evil and became part of that evil. I'm not justifying them. I'm telling you they're evil. In our religion, we believe that the people who are ISIS and whatnot are from a denomination of Islam that are called the Khawarij. They are from the filthiest, dirtiest. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, described them as the dogs of the hellfire due to their extremism and radicalization. Bearing in mind, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, spoke out against extremism before liberal democracy, before secularism, before any of these things. 3 times he said, may the extremists perish, may the extremists perish, may the extremists perish. At a time when Christianity was extreme, at a time when the church was gouging out the eyes of people who would speak out against the church and cutting off their tongues and, you know, questioning whether the woman even has a soul. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was telling you, extremism, may it perish. 3 times he mentioned it. And many times he warned against extremism. And Allah in the Quran tells you, you know, do not be extreme. Do not fall into extremism. Then Allah mentions, like the people of the book, the Jews and the Christians, because they fell into extremism. For example, what I just previously quoted to you. So, you know, there's nothing to do with Islam in any way, shape, or form. The Prophet Muhammad said these are the dogs of the hellfire. That's what we believe. Okay, he has a beard like me, but he's not like me. His creed is not my creed. This is what an orthodox creed is. The reason I'm telling you this is because, you know, you can't see a person like me or a woman who's wearing a niqab, a veil, and be like, yo, she is an extremist just because others do. Because now I'm saying extremists wear niqabs and extremists don't wear niqabs. Extremists wear veils and don't wear veils. Extremists have beards and now they don't have veils. They don't have beards. In France, you know, you have the woman, she was known to be a woman who had several relationships with different men and used to go clubbing and whatnot. Come on, no girl in a veil goes to the club and has relations with different men. That's, you see, it's always a very kind of thing like that. So, hopefully I've clarified my position and my stance to you guys. Not mine, but the stance of Islam on these issues. You know, we as Muslims, this is our view. This is the classical view. You're not a threat to us. We are not a threat to you. That which you see as is a result of, you know, politics and sociology, social kind of, you know, and economic kind of struggles and whatnot. Look at, you know, the backgrounds of these people. They don't even come from religious backgrounds. And like I said, going to Professor Robert Pape and his study, you know, his study was actually so powerful that the US government actually, you know, took it on board and used it to understand, you know, counter-terrorism and whatnot and how to counter it. So I'd really tell you to look at that. But you're having these freak incidents. They might be Muslims, they happen to be Muslims, but they and their views and their actions are free from Islam. My job here is to tell you Islam has nothing to do with this. So that what would really not help the situation right now is for people who are listening, you know, seeing these things happening, to now start retaliating. Because now, you know, we're hearing about, you know, whenever these attacks happen, a Muslim old man, someone gets attacked, or a Muslim woman gets a scarf pulled off. Now, you know what that's going to happen? That's going to make other Muslims angry. Like the majority of Muslims who are there like me, like I don't believe in this stuff. Why am I being held to account? Why is my sister, why is my wife, why is my mum's scarf being pulled off? Just because she's a Muslim, because some other crazy psychopathic guy who happened to be a Muslim did this thing, when this is not even part of my religion. But why is my mum having to get a scarf pulled off? So as a human being, that's going to make him angry. That's going to make them angry. And I'm just worried that's just going to make tensions increase and whatnot. And do we want a bloodbath on our hands? We don't want a bloodbath. You know? And please, I know there's some people who are perverted there might take that as a threat. That's not me threatening. I'm not saying I'm not saying, oh, you know, there's going to be a bloodbath if you do that. No, I'm not saying, I'm just telling you based on, if you look at experience of what happened, what you expect is that you've got these idiots who are out there who are doing these things. If not a group who has not in any way, shape or form condoned that act, feels that they're suffering from consequences of what another person has done, then that's going to make them retaliate. And that's going to make the other group retaliate, resulting in blood, which none of us want. So it would not make sense to do that. Rather, what would be good is for you guys to sit down, speak to a Muslim like myself, ask, what do you really believe? Don't be scared of me. If I'm your neighbour, stop me, talk to me, sit me down, let me take you for a cup of tea, learn. So, you know, the first stage is to remove ignorance from ourselves. And I'll be honest with you, you're going to find Islam is a lovely religion. When 9/11 happened, a lot of people thought, what did Islam, what are these crazy people? But then that made them look into the religion more. They realized when they researched the religion that what happened in 9/11 is not anything to do with Islam, it's not representative of what Muslims believe. People saw that crystal clearly. And that's why you had the biggest influx of people converting to Islam in that decade between 2000 and 2010 than you did ever before. More books were written against Islam between 2000 and 2010 than before. And still more people converted. Here in the UK, 100,000 people became Muslim. 70% of whom were women. 70% of whom were women. Sorry, it was either 100,000 or 10,000. Forgive me, my memory is not serving me correctly right now. But it was one of the two. I'm very sure it was 100,000. But 10,000 regardless is a huge number. And 70% of them are women. People think we oppress women. Why are the Caucasian, white, British-born women coming to Islam with their own accord? Freedom of choice, having come from a background of being able to wear what they want, do what they want, but they choose to wear the niqab and the veil because they found something amazing in Islam. I want to mention to you one final point, okay? One final point. And that is, what is Islam's issue with every other non-Muslim? What is the one thing that we have as a... What is the dividing factor between Islam and everything else? You might ask, what do you want? Do you want to establish Sharia law here? Do you want to do this? Do you want us to all wear veils? Do you want to establish, capital punishment? What do you as Muslims want? What's your issue? I'll tell you very clearly what our issue is. And our issue is just one thing. It is not the veil. It's not the Sharia law. It's not capital punishments. It's that the non-Muslims do not worship Allah. That is our issue with every other non-Muslim. That doesn't mean we have fights, we have, that you are threatened by us or whatever. No. But that's what you're asking, what do we Muslims want from the non-Muslims? We want them to worship Allah and worship Him alone. We want you to know that you have a creator who created you. When you die, you'll return back to Him. He will judge you. He will enter you into paradise or into hellfire based on what you did. Paradise is eternal ecstasy and hellfire is eternal torment. You have this short amount of time to be the best person you can be. The only way to be the best person you can be is to surrender yourself to Allah. We don't know good. We don't know morality. Allah taught us morality. He taught us morality through our prophets. He taught us morality through the Quran. The last and final prophet who was sent as a mercy to all of mankind, as a messenger to all of mankind, to deliver the message of worshipping Him and Him alone. Worship Him and have a relationship with Him, and you'll find joy, you'll find sweetness in this life and the next. That is all Muslims want. That's our invitation to you. If you reject that invitation, that's between you and your Creator on the Day of Judgment. But I'm not in a position to compel you. I'm not in a position to force you. I can't do that. I just give you that invitation. Come to Islam. Come to worshiping your Lord who created you, who gave you eyes, who gave you ears, He gave you everything you have. The least you can do is acknowledge Him by worshipping Him and worshipping Him alone, not worshipping Him as a man like Jesus, or worshipping Him as a statue, or worshipping the universe He created. The whole reason He created the universe was so you can see His magnificent power and His magnificent glory, and His ability and His intelligence, and the intelligent design that you see, the power that you see. Why? That was so you could know there's an intelligent, powerful Creator behind this. But then some people, they fall into atheism and worship the universe, worship evolution, or a natural, process, as they call it, as opposed to the Creator who created that process. That's all our issue is. If you come to Islam, there is a paradise for you. And in this life, there is authority for you. I'm going to mention to you a verse. Allah mentioned, وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Allah said that this is a promise that He makes to the believers who do righteous deeds. What's the promise? لَيَسْتَخْلِفَنَّهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ. That Allah will give them authority on the earth, and security and protection and safety. But there's a condition. He said He will give that authority to them, and that power to them, and safety to them, and security to them. يَعْبُدُونَنِي, if they worship Allah alone. لَا يُشْرِكُونَ بِي شَيْئًا, and they do not worship anyone else besides Allah in any way, shape or form. You know why this verse is powerful, particularly if you're here from the UK? Look, in the UK we've got problems. We've got problems. Economic problems, social problems, political problems, whatever have you. Problems of security and whatnot. This verse is telling you, if you worship Allah, Allah will give you strength and authority and security and safety and prosperity, and He will take us out all of those problems. And He said He did that for those before you, so He will do it for you as well. He said it in the verse. He did it, He'll give it to you the way He gave the strength and authority to those before you. Who are the ones He gave it to before us? Before you in the UK? He gave it to the Arabs. Read the history books. The companions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the Arabs who this message came to, within a span of 24 years, they conquered the Roman and the Persian Empire. Bedouins who were fighting over camels for years and years and years, who didn't even know how to read and write, didn't even wear shoes, barefooted Bedouins. They happened to conquer what? Conquer Rome and conquer Persia from the footsteps of China in the east, the shores of Spain in the west. Allah gave them the whole land. Okay? Contrary to what you believe that there's out there, there was, unjust killing and whatnot. No. In fact, Like the Jews in Spain were sending letters to the Muslims to come and liberate them from their oppressors in Spain. So they were telling Muslims, come, help us. We heard how just you guys are. Please come. And Allah gave them the riches, the strength, and everything, and the authority. Why? Think about it. How? They had no military expertise or nothing, no money. But He took over Rome and He took over Persia. This is in your history books. Just read it. Because they worshipped Allah alone. But then when did Allah take it away? When did they lose Spain? When they fell into fornication? When they fell into alcohol? When did they lose the rest of it? When they started to fall into polytheism and worshipping other things besides Allah, and when they fell into these sins, then Allah took it away. That's why the Muslims are in the situation that they're in. There's not a Muslim country that you go to, majority of them, in which Muslims are worshipping graves and things like that. To show you they moved away from the original essence of worshipping Allah alone. But this is now an invitation from Allah open to you. Allah gave it to the Arabs, He gave it to the Asians. They had it, you saw it. The history book is testimony to the fact that when they worshipped Allah, Allah gave them the whole world. But then when they went away from Allah, Allah took the world away from them. But now it's open. This invitation is open for you guys here in the UK. Worship Allah. Come to your Lord. Come to your Lord. And let the glory return to the UK. As a country established upon the worship and the servitude of their Lord, Allah. And as a result of it, Allah will give you authority. He'll give you everything. And the British people here, as slaves of their Lord, can go back and show the Arabs and the rest of the world how it's done. They had this chance, they lost it. They lost this chance of prosperity and success and riches and power and strength and security and safety and technology and everything. They lost this chance. They had it. They can still have it, but right now they don't. It's up for grabs. Whoever wants to take it, Allah saying, you worship me, I'm going to give you everything that you want. So this is open for the UK. I would love for the UK to be in this position of authority and nobility for the rest of the world. But it would only come when and why. And I love this for you when and why. I love this for you when you worship Allah. Like I said, if you don't want to, it's up to you. That's between you and your Lord on the Day of Judgment. But if you do, it's open for you. But if you don't want to, like I said, it's up to you. Don't mean I'm going to fight you if you don't do it. But that's the Islamic message. That's it. Worship Allah alone. No, that's it. So yeah, that was it. So if you guys have any questions, please email me at nasihasession@gmail.com. I'll do my best to try and answer them as best as I can. I'm sorry it became long. I really wanted to address this issue. I feel like, there needs to be a dialogue between Muslims and non-Muslims, and I'm trying to lead it. I'm trying to lead that dialogue. So I know I'm different to you. I don't believe what you believe. My morals and my values are different to what yours are. There are some things in common for the fact that we don't justify this killing and spillage of innocent blood. But just because I'm different doesn't mean I'm a threat, doesn't mean I'm a harm, doesn't mean you can't sit down and have some tea with me, have a chat and learn about my religion. Learn about me, let me learn about you, let me hear what you have to say. We can talk, let's discuss, have a dialogue. That's ignorance is one of the biggest problems a nation can suffer from, and the best way to remove ignorance is to have these dialogues. So I'm open for it. Are you? Like I said, email me, nasihasession@gmail.com. Go down below, my email address is there. Let's start a dialogue. Let's talk. You have questions, I'll answer them. You want to come to my house, want to come meal? Let's do it. If you're in financial trouble, I'm here. The Muslim community is here. We're going to help you. We want to help you, no problem. But, let's take it step by step, okay? Anyway, Assalamu alaikum to my brothers and sisters who are listening, and everyone else. Goodbye.